Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to a special episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas. Today is March 2nd, 2025. It's 3:25 p.m. Central Standard Time. I normally read the work of others. Today, I will be reading a rough draft of a work that I have been working on myself on my Substack, which you will find at readingepicthreads.substack.com. Those of you who are watching, please give this a thumbs up, give it a share, and I hope that you find useful what I'm about to say. I will be giving a brief commercial right now for the best skincare the world has ever known. Go to tulipblooms.shop. Use promo code Shapiro for 10% off. Let's begin. From readingepicthreads.substack.com. An open letter to Bitcoin maximalists. I am your enemy. Dear Bitcoin maximalists, let's not mince words. I am your enemy. Not because I oppose Bitcoin, but because I oppose you. The cultists, the propagandists, the self-serving demagogues who have twisted what could have been a neutral, open-source innovation into a fundamentalist, exclusionary ideology that threatens the very principles of decentralization and financial sovereignty you pretend to champion. For years, you have poisoned the well of discourse, browbeaten developers, censored dissent, and waged information warfare against anyone who dares to question the dogma that Bitcoin is the only true cryptocurrency, that proof of work is the only legitimate consensus mechanism, and that every alternative is a centralized scam. This is a lie, and you know it. I am here to dismantle your myths, expose your contradictions, and reveal your movement for what it is. A betrayal of the ideals you claim to uphold. But first, let's remember, I'm probably not talking about all of you. Bitcoin lovers versus Bitcoin maximalists. Know the difference. Before you get defensive, let me get one thing straight. I'm not talking about you just because you own Bitcoin. If you believe in Bitcoin's value, if you hold Bitcoin, if you even evangelize it to friends, good for you. That does not make you a Bitcoin maximalist. This is where so many people get confused. Bitcoin maximalists love to pretend that any attack on them is an attack on Bitcoin itself. It isn't. The problem isn't Bitcoin. The problem is them. So let's break this down and make sure you know exactly where you stand. Bitcoin lovers, normal people who like sound money. Most Bitcoin holders, the majority, are just people who see Bitcoin as a hedge, a technological breakthrough, or an alternative financial system worth supporting. Some might even call themselves Bitcoiners. These are not the people I'm talking about. Bitcoin lovers hold Bitcoin because they believe in its long-term value. They acknowledge the flaws in Bitcoin. They may see Bitcoin's energy consumption as a trade-off rather than a selling point. They may be interested in other cryptos without feeling the need to attack them. They don't scream, "Have fun staying poor," at strangers. They're not cultists. They're just invested in what they see as a promising asset. Most Bitcoin holders are rational, open-minded, and completely disconnected from the toxic ideology of maximalism. If this sounds like you, congratulations. You're not part of the problem. Bitcoin normies, enthusiastic, maybe a little naive, but not malicious. There's another group, Bitcoin normies, who have absorbed some of the Bitcoin maximalist rhetoric, but aren't full-on zealots. They believe Bitcoin is the best, but they don't actively attack other cryptos. They think proof of stake is centralized, but they can't tell you why. They repeat Maxi's talking points, but don't actually understand the deeper ideological war. Normies can be swayed. They're often just listening to the loudest voices and haven't looked deeply into competing ideas. They're Bitcoin enthusiasts, but not Bitcoin warriors. This group isn't the enemy either. Many of them just need better information. Bitcoin maximalists, the toxic cultists who are the problem. Then, at the bottom of the barrel, you have Bitcoin maximalists, the people I am here to expose and dismantle. Maximalists believe Bitcoin is the only legitimate cryptocurrency. Everything else is a scam, even if it has clear utility. They aggressively attack anyone who builds outside Bitcoin. Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, Solana, all are shitcoins, no matter the tech behind them. They deny any flaw in Bitcoin. Are the fees skyrocketing? It's good, actually. Slow transactions? Oh, it makes Bitcoin more valuable. Mining centralization? Shut up, fudster. They are religious about Bitcoin. They don't invest. They worship. They have turned Satoshi into a prophet and proof of work into a holy doctrine. Maximalists are not just passionate investors. They are active obstructionists who will lie, distort, and suppress innovation to ensure that no alternative to Bitcoin gains traction. And they are dangerous, not to governments, but to crypto itself. So, if you love Bitcoin, if you're a long-term holder, if you even prefer it to all other coins, that's fine. That does not make you a Bitcoin maximalist. But if you parrot nonsense like Bitcoin is the only real crypto, everything else is a centralized scam, or have fun staying poor, then congratulations, you are the problem, and I'm here to bury you. The Bitcoin maximalist gospel, a house built on lies. Bitcoin maximalism is not just wrong. It's intellectually dishonest and strategically catastrophic. It is an ideology built on proclamations that range from misleading to outright fraudulent. Let's examine a few of your most cherished claims and the people who spread them. Number one, Michael Saylor, the corporate cult leader. Michael Saylor, the billionaire turned Bitcoin evangelist, is one of your high priests. He preaches Bitcoin like a messianic figure, comparing it to digital real estate, to God, to an ark against the flood of fiat debasement. But what he does not preach is the truth. Saylor was a vocal critic of Bitcoin until he realized he could use it to pump his own bags. He has advocated reckless, all-in strategies that have bankrupted individuals and put MicroStrategy itself at existential risk. This is a man who once lost $6 billion in a single day, yet you entrust him as a financial sage. His rhetoric is saturated with religious fervor. He speaks of Bitcoin as an incorruptible force of nature, yet he plays the market like any other Wall Street predator. He's not here for decentralization. He's here to build an empire. 2, Max Keiser, the deranged prophet. Then there's Max Keiser, the unhinged, self-proclaimed financial revolutionary who screeches about fiat collapse while dumping on his own followers. Keiser's brand of Bitcoin maximalism is pure grift, a circus act designed to radicalize naive investors into believing that hyperinflation is always imminent, that fiat will die tomorrow, and that Bitcoin will rise to $1 million in an instant. But what does Keiser actually do? He promotes whatever token serves his interests, from ICOs to pump and dump schemes. His financial predictions have been wrong more times than he's been right, and yet the maxi pads cling to his every word like gospel. 3, Jason Lowry, the clown prince of Bitcoin warfare. If there were a gold medal for fundamentally misunderstanding cybersecurity, it would go to Jason Lowery, the author of Soft War, an abomination of a book that attempts to reframe proof of work as a form of military power projection. Lowery makes the laughable claim that Bitcoin mining is akin to kinetic warfare, that proof of work is a form of force projection that deters cyber threats in the same way that physical military forces deter war. His book, published with MIT's name attached to it, is a national embarrassment that confuses cryptographic security with energy expenditure, as if burning more coal makes your system more resilient. The reality? Proof of work does not function as an encryption mechanism, does not provide a security advantage outside of blockchain consensus, and is entirely unsuitable for national defense applications. Lowery does not understand this because Lowery does not understand cybersecurity. The great lie. Proof of work as the only decentralized solution. The most insidious lie told by Bitcoin maximalists is that proof of work is the only decentralized solution to the Byzantine generals' problem. This is deliberate deception designed to trick the masses into dismissing every technological advancement that threatens Bitcoin's dominance. The Byzantine generals' problem, a brief history. For those unfamiliar, the Byzantine generals' problem is a fundamental issue in distributed computing. Imagine a group of generals who must coordinate an attack on a city, but they can only communicate through messengers, some of whom may be traitors. How do they ensure that all loyal generals reach a consensus, even if some messages are intercepted or falsified? This problem is the foundation of distributed consensus mechanisms. Bitcoin solved it using proof of work, but proof of work is not the only solution. And it is certainly not the most efficient. The history of alternative solutions. For decades, computer scientists have worked on Byzantine fault tolerance mechanisms. Bitcoin's proof of work was one solution, but others have since emerged. 1. Practical Byzantine fault tolerance, PBFT, developed in the late 1990s, used in systems like Hyperledger Fabric. 2. Delegated proof of stake, DPoS, used in blockchains like EOS and Cardano, which provide security without wasting energy. 3. Nakamoto consensus variants, modernized versions of proof of work incorporating game theoretic improvements. 4. Proof of stake used by Ethereum, reducing energy consumption by 99% while maintaining decentralization. And I haven't even gone into some of the innovations with XRP and XLM because that's a more complicated statement. Maximalists pretend these innovations do not exist because acknowledging them would shatter their narrative. They insist that proof of work is the only viable option, even though other consensus mechanisms have proven themselves in production and have been thoroughly peer-reviewed. And this is one of the few times that peer-reviewed actually means something. The absurdity of Bitcoin maximalists' decentralization argument. Bitcoin maximalists cling to the claim that Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized cryptocurrency because it has no central authority. They insist that all other cryptos are controlled by companies, foundations, or known developers, and therefore Bitcoin is the only pure digital asset. But here's the reality that they refuse to acknowledge. Bitcoin's core development is controlled by a tiny, insular group of people who dictate its future, and many of them are closely tied to Blockstream, a corporation that profits if Bitcoin remains crippled. Let's break down this delusion and expose the contradictions. 1. Bitcoin has no central authority except for the few people who control it. Maximalists parrot the idea that Bitcoin is decentralized because Satoshi disappeared and no single entity owns or operates it. But Bitcoin does not function like some democratic, self-governing force of nature. It is maintained by Bitcoin Core, the dominant software client that nearly all miners and nodes rely on to run the network. And who maintains Bitcoin Core? A small, exclusive group of developers with commit access to the code base. These developers have enormous power. They decide which proposals get merged into Bitcoin Core and which are rejected. If they refuse a change, it does not happen. They dictate the future of Bitcoin's development. If a proposal threatens their interests or conflicts with the vision of the people funding them, it gets buried. They are the gatekeepers of Bitcoin's evolution, yet maximalists refuse to acknowledge this as any kind of centralization. Now, who are these developers? Many of them have direct financial or ideological ties to Blockstream, the private company that has built an entire business model around ensuring that Bitcoin never scales on its base layer. 2. Blockstream, the hidden hand controlling Bitcoin's future. Blockstream is not some neutral research lab trying to help Bitcoin flourish. It is a private for-profit company that sells sidechain and layer 2 solutions like the Lightning Network. But here's the critical flaw in their incentives. Blockstream only makes money if Bitcoin remains congested and incapable of handling large transaction volumes. If Bitcoin could scale on its base layer by increasing block sizes, for example, there would be no need for Blockstream's products. This is why Blockstream-backed developers fought tooth and nail against increasing block sizes during the 2017 scaling wars. Instead of allowing Bitcoin to function as efficient digital cash, they forced an artificial block bottleneck onto the network, ensuring that transactions would remain expensive, slow, and unscalable. Here's what Blockstream has done to maintain its grip on Bitcoin. They pushed SegWit and Lightning Network while fiercely opposing any increase to Bitcoin's block size. Larger blocks would have allowed Bitcoin to scale naturally, but that would have destroyed the need for Blockstream's side chains. They embedded themselves into Bitcoin Core development, ensuring that only acceptable changes get approved. The developers who control Bitcoin's future are largely tied to Blockstream or share its ideological position. They dominate the Bitcoin narrative. Blockstream insiders control Bitcoin conferences, forums, and all media channels, ensuring that their version of Bitcoin's future is the only one that gets amplified. Yet, despite all of this blatant centralization, maximalists have the gall to claim that Bitcoin is the only crypto without a central authority. If Bitcoin is truly decentralized, why do a handful of developers who work for a single company get to dictate its roadmap? If Bitcoin is truly independent, why does it function as an ecosystem where the most powerful voices all have financial incentives to keep it broken? The answer is simple. Bitcoin's so-called decentralization is a carefully maintained illusion. 3. The hypocrisy of calling other cryptos centralized. Maximalists love to call Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, and any other competing network centralized because they have known founders, development teams, or funding organizations. But let's examine the hypocrisy of this claim. Ethereum has the Ethereum Foundation, But it also has multiple independent development teams working on different implementations of the Ethereum client. No single group controls the network, and Ethereum's upgrade process involves coordination across a wide array of contributors, not just a handful of insiders. XRP was created by Ripple's founders, yet its consensus mechanism is open source and does not rely on mining cartels like Bitcoin. Validators on the XRP ledger can reject proposed protocol changes if they disagree with them. No single company or entity can force changes onto the network. Cardano has IOHK, the Cardano Foundation, and decentralized governance mechanisms which allow its ecosystem to evolve based on community participation rather than dictated by a small clique of developers. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's development is controlled by a tiny group of core maintainers, many of whom are funded by Blockstream, and its mining power is heavily concentrated in a handful of pools that have direct incentives to maintain the status quo. The difference between Bitcoin and these other projects? Bitcoin maximalists refuse to admit their own centralization while attacking everyone else. They scream that Ethereum is centralized because the Ethereum Foundation exists. But at least Ethereum is actively evolving and improving. They claim XRP is centralized because it was created by a known company, while ignoring the fact that Bitcoin Core is run by a known group of developers with commit access. They say proof of stake is run by insiders, while conveniently forgetting that Bitcoin mining is dominated by a few massive pools and industrial energy giants. Bitcoin's decentralization is a fairy tale, one that benefits Blockstream, mining cartels, and the tiny elite who control its codebase. 4. The reality. Bitcoin is more centralized than the networks that maximalists hate. If decentralization means a system where no single entity has ultimate control, then Bitcoin fails its own test. A few facts that Bitcoin maximalists refuse to acknowledge. Bitcoin core developers have near total control over protocol upgrades. If they don't approve a change, it does not happen. Bitcoin mining is concentrated in a few pools. A handful of entities control the vast majority of hash power, making network attacks more feasible than maximalists care to admit. Blockstream has inserted itself as Bitcoin's de facto scaling solution provider. They have positioned themselves as gatekeepers, ensuring that Bitcoin never becomes scalable at layer 1. In contrast, Ethereum has multiple client implementations and a broad developer ecosystem. Its governance is transparent, open to public debate, and does not rely on a single company or entity. XRP's consensus model does not depend on mining cartels or expensive energy consumption. Transactions are settled quickly without relying on any single central authority. Proof of stake networks distribute control among thousands of validators worldwide, unlike Bitcoin, which requires massive energy resources to participate in governance. Proof of stake allows anyone with a stake in the network to have influence. And yet, Bitcoin maximalists continue to push the absurd narrative that their coin is the only one that is truly decentralized. They don't say it because it's true. They say it because their entire identity depends on believing it. The maximalist delusion. Centralization exists everywhere but Bitcoin. Maximalists will go to war to defend this lie, because admitting the truth that Bitcoin's development is controlled by a small elite would force them to reconsider everything they believe. The real question is, how much longer can they keep up the delusion? If you are a Bitcoin holder who actually values decentralization, you should be asking these questions. If you're willing to call Ethereum or XRP centralized, but you refuse to admit the centralization within Bitcoin Core, then you are the one who has been deceived. The truth is out there. The only question is, are you willing to see it? XRP, attacked for a reason. Bitcoin maximalists love to call XRP centralized, yet it remains the only cryptocurrency that was attacked from all sides by governments, regulators, and the media. Why? Because it was a threat to the financial orders in ways that Bitcoin never was. Bitcoin has always been given favorable media coverage from CNBC to Bloomberg. Bitcoin is treated as the inevitable future. XRP was the only crypto the SEC aggressively sued. The lawsuit was coordinated, an attack from multiple angles. Why attack XRP but not Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin was never a threat to the existing power structure. XRP, by enabling fast, borderless financial transactions, was. If you believe XRP is centralized while Bitcoin is not, ask yourself why the establishment never moved against Bitcoin in the same way. The layer 2 betrayal. Bitcoin's path back to the banks. The final knife in the back of decentralization is Bitcoin's layer 2 strategy, particularly the Lightning Network. Maximalists claim Lightning is the solution to Bitcoin's scalability issues, but what does Lightning actually do? It centralizes payments into hubs, effectively reintroducing a banking layer on top of Bitcoin. It requires users to trust third parties to manage liquidity. It undermines the very principle of self-custody, as most users will interact with Bitcoin through centralized Lightning service providers. In other words, Lightning recreates the banking system on top of Bitcoin, but with worse user interface and higher fees. So much for decentralization. Maximalists, I am your enemy because you are the enemy of progress. Bitcoin maximalism is not just a misguided ideology. It is an active effort to suppress innovation. It is a cult led by a handful of grifters, corporate overlords, and military-industrial complex shills who have hijacked the narrative. Bitcoin itself is not the enemy, but you, the maximalists, are. You poison discourse, you suppress competition, and you lie to the very people you claim to help. We are at war for the future of financial freedom, and I will not let you win. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please share this with somebody who may be poisoned by Bitcoin maximalism. It is a lie. It is a fraud. It is a danger to our civilization itself. To support what I do, please go to tulipblooms.shop and buy some of the best organic skincare products the world has ever known, from body butters to skin serums with castor oil to aloe-based magical lotions containing food-grade plant oils, all of it. Use promo code Shapiro. And yes, I mean that promo code ironically for those of you who may be new. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please share, hit the thumbs up, all the good stuff. You can find me at readingepicthreads.substack.com, pgunnels1 on Twitter, and of course on Rumble, pgunnels. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.